2024 has been a roller coaster year, both figuratively and literally. From ride announcements to ride breakdowns, unforgettable trips around the world, and tons of videos on this channel that you have enjoyed. Let's take a look at the highs, lows and surprises from 2024, shall we? Okay, so if we start in January, obviously not too many parks are open, certainly not in the UK, but we did get some announcements. We got confirmation of the name for Nemesis, Nemesis Reborn, and we also saw the ride start testing. And this was our first glimpse at that train, and the very first run was particularly slow and had a lot of people worried that this was not going to be comparable to the original. Thankfully, after it bedded in and had done a few laps of the track, it's back to its good old self. And the good thing is that although it is a little bit quieter, even with the sand in the track, we still have that Nemesis roar. In addition to that, we also got our first look at Epic Universe with an animated flyover that the park released. Now, this kind of showed us all the main areas that we were expecting to get, and certainly gave us a sneak into what's to come next year. Over at Cedar Point, they announced the 3 trains for Top Thrill 2. We'll be covering that one shortly because, yeah, that's been an interesting one. And moving into February, this is when Alton Towers started to announce their plans for the year, and they certainly had high expectations. They announced a whole bunch of new VIP events, you know, from lift hill walks on the Wicker Man and Oblivion. They had Alton After Dark. They teased all the other things that were coming. Again, we know this didn't quite go to plan, but we did get some of these key things, such as the VIP events, which was fantastic. This was also the month that we got our first glimpse at the trains for Voltron, as the park kind of shifted them over from where they were constructed to the park itself, and they do look beautiful. In addition to that, Blackpool announced a rebrand, kind of. They sort of said we're going with Pleasure Beach Resort, and they claim, you know, we've used this for a little while, we're just going to lean into it a little bit more. First of all, the very first incarnation of that logo did not go down well because it was the garish blue and yellow, and as I've said in other videos, many people compared it to IKEA, Ryanair and various other brands that are kind of yellow and blue. They've then sort of tweaked the colours and that, and it's sort of got a lot better. The resort part, I think they are still finding their feet with that. I think it will make more sense over time. But as we know, you go into the Kiss Me Quick and you've got Blackpool Pleasure Beach Resort and Pleasure Beach Lancashire. So it's got a bit of a mixed identity at the moment, which is not ideal. This was also the month that I released the Alton Towers History series, which kind of kicked everything off, and there's been quite a few since. So March was a big one for me personally. I went over to Florida for 2 weeks, did all the big parks over there. So we did all the Disneys, we did the Universal parks, we did SeaWorld, and we did Busch Gardens. Some of those were good, some of them not so much. If you haven't already checked out those vlogs, make sure you do so. Oh, and the other thing that happened in March was that Blackpool did their Ghosts and Gardens event, which I was able to go to. I think that was the same day as Towers opened, because I remember they sort of joked around, some people are off to see a crab in a hole. But yes, Ghosts and Gardens, the ghost part was good. It was great to see behind the scenes of the ghost train. I mean, you kind of see it anyway, but you could walk through slower and you could take advantage of it, you know, sort of see it all. The gardens part was a little bit poor because, well, the weather was crap, and you just got to stand at a little bit of the steeplechase garden, eating your soggy donuts with a coffee. So, but that happened in March. Moving on to April, and this was when, now there's obviously been a lot of kind of talk around Project Ocean at Alton Towers and what it was going to be, what could it be. Of course, nothing was confirmed until hardware actually turned up later in the year. However, there was that document leaked that they basically said, we've done a noise assessment of a comparable topspin in another park. So this was kind of when we knew Project Ocean was going to be a topspin. In addition to that, we got a second book from John Wardley, which I have somewhere. And also this is when Voltron finally opened. Again, as I said earlier, I haven't been on it, but most people have been pretty positive about it. Few people have said it's not that great, or particularly the edge seats are a little bit vibraty. That ties into some rides from next year, but that'll be a separate video. This was also, as I say, kind of big in the industry because, as we know, Universal are toying with the idea of coming to the UK. It certainly feels very positive right now, but of course nothing is confirmed at this point. It's still in the consultation period, but this was the public consultation. This was when they physically came to, I think it was a university, and people could come along, see what the plans were, and kind of, you know, ask questions, raise concerns, etc. The positive from that was, I think around 92% of people were in favour of Universal Great Britain, which is a ridiculously high proportion. So it sounds like it's at that kind of negotiation stage right now between the government and the theme park, like who's paying for what. fingers crossed we are going to get this. It was a busy month in May because this was the first Nemesis VIP event on Star Wars Day, so it was May the 4th. I was there, quite a few other people were there as well, obviously. It was fantastic. It was probably one of the best VIP events I have been to. It's both great to see behind the scenes of any attraction, you know, so getting to kind of walk parts of Nemesis track that you don't normally, getting to go into the maintenance bay, getting to chat to all the staff, hearing how it all works, but also the talk section with Bianca and the two Johns was fantastic. Now, again, that section you weren't allowed to film in, so there's not any footage from that. But it was a spectacular event. This was also when we had our Love to Explore social event in Flamingoland, which was it's always great to meet up with all the other channels and go along there. Flamingoland's a park that kind of gets ignored a lot, so it's kind of nice to go there. This is also when Top Thrill 2 opened, lasted about 8 days and then shut down again. So I think a few people managed to get on it, and they're very lucky. This was also when Hyperia closed. I mean, it opened and then it closed a day later. And annoyingly, it was closed when I went down as well, so I didn't get on it until much later in the year. And then back at Alton Towers, they opened the 4 new food options down in X Sector. I've not experienced these because every time I've been, they've been closed. I guess the thing that frustrates me is that I think we all want rides down there. It's great to have more food options, but let's hope they're temporary, and it's just until they bring in some new attractions, because we'd rather have some more rides down there instead. So in June there was a few things. We started off with, so at the start of the year we'd had the announcement that Blackpool was removing Grand Prix. And in June this is when they held their final lap. So it was the only day of the year that the ride was open. It was quite a steep ticket, 50 quid to get in, just to kind of have a little bit of there was some music, there was some girls dancing, and then you got a couple of shots on that ride. A few other rides were open. I didn't go. I had other plans that day, but I certainly wouldn't have spent 50 quid on it. And obviously the ride has now been almost entirely demolished, but it's good in a way that we got a send-off, because obviously we all know what happened with the Wild Mouse and some people are still really sore about that. So it was good that the park did something to kind of send off the ride. I think 50 quid a ticket was a little bit steep, that said. This was also when I did my annual trek down to all the parks down south, because as you know, for me getting down to Thorpe and Chessington and Legoland and that, they're not exactly easy. So you know, the last couple of years I have just driven down there, spent a week down there and done them all. And well, as I kind of toyed with earlier, that's when I got to Hyperia and it was shut because it valleyed the day before I went. Speaking of other things that weren't great, this was also the month that there was a fire on the Wicker Man. Now, again, nothing has been confirmed by the park, but certainly the common belief is that somebody's vape fell out their pocket, got stuck on the track and exploded. Now, the park did a great job of shutting that ride down before it got too badly damaged, but it was out of action for several weeks before they brought it back again. So, as I've said before, when they say make sure all your loose items are secure, zip your pockets up. The other thing was that the Alton Towers launched their tour around the Grand House, the actual tower itself. I don't know, some people are there's mixed people around this. I haven't experienced it firsthand. There are people who are like, why is this a paid thing? I think it was only £10, £5–10. It's reasonably cheap, but some people are like, well, you used to be able to do this for free. Now, their argument is that, you know, it's a lot to maintain that building, and they don't want people just roaming wildly and going in places they shouldn't. So it's kind of a guided tour, and that adds a little bit of value to it. I don't think it's the kind of thing you would do regularly. As I say, I haven't done it at all this year. And I'm going to assume this is going to continue into next year as well, but at least the towers were reopened again for people to visit. Now, July was when Disney announced that they were rebranding Genie Plus to the Lightning Lane, Single Lightning Lane and Multi-Lightning Lane or something. Disney seemed to have a terrible ability to market this Fast Pass system. If you've seen my video, which came out a few days ago, I just did Disney Paris. And when I did Disney Paris, they have Disney Premier Access, and their version, there's two. There's one you can just pay for the rides you want to skip, fine. The other one is Ultimate, which is not cheap, but you just get one shot on everything and you just walk up and go on it, which is how Fast Pass should work. I know there's a lot of people who think Fast Pass shouldn't exist, and I kind of agree with you, but if you're gonna put it into a park, you need to make it expensive enough that it restricts the number of people using it, and if you do that, then the privileged few can use it and the rest aren't impacted by it. But nonetheless, July is when they tried rebranding it and making it simpler. I haven't been out since they've done that. When I visited at the start of the year, it was Genie Plus, so I don't know how good it is, but yeah, I think they just need to copy the French system and the Universal system and just go, there's a stinking expensive ticket that not very many people are going to buy, and that way the normal queue isn't impacted. So, or do a Europa Park and just don't have Fast Pass at all. that would work as well. This was also the month that we did the second social event with Love to Explore, and we went to Gulliver's. Another Gulliver's. Mike really loves Gulliver's. But it was another one I hadn't been to, and yet again it was good to see everybody there. That antelope ride is bonkers because it absolutely flies down the hill and then crawls back up it again. It is the weirdest profiling of any woody I have ever been on. Now July was also when Blackpool kind of teased, hinted that they might consider a third hotel. So this was when Amanda went on that podcast with the Mac family and said that she's considering a third hotel. I know a lot of people were like, why are you doing a third hotel? The park is struggling. And they're not wrong, but at the same time, the hotels make a truckload of money. And I'm hoping, and I'm maybe being optimistic here, I'm hoping if they can take the money from those hotels and pump it back into the park, well then, let's build 10 hotels, you know, so that the park gets some rejuvenation. But anyway, this was the month that she kind of alluded to it. Evidently, it's not imminent. You know, we're probably talking several years off if this does happen at all. But yeah, that was when that was announced. This was also the month that Gold Rush opened in Drayton Manor, the Intamin multi-dimensional coaster that has 2 different cycles. So, you know, frustratingly, I was there about 3 weeks before it opened, and I haven't got back since. So I still haven't experienced this one, but it's been generally positive. Most people have said it is a good ride. There's very few people that criticise Intamin rides, let's be fair. They are not typically bad rides. And it's the first one in Drayton that has 2 trains. Kind of need that everywhere else. So that was a positive. On the maybe negative side, Towers closed the dungeons. They said we're closing it to do something for Scarefest, which we now of course know was Amigos in the Afterlife. And as I say, personally, I am not that fussed. I never use the dungeons. I've said in other videos, as a pass holder, I can visit every dungeon in the UK, but I couldn't visit that one without paying for it, which seems really weird. It was strangely positioned, and I'm kind of not sad it's gone. So yeah, July was when that disappeared. Now August is when we started to hear rumblings of Blackpool getting a Intamin gyro swing, because Ride Rater spotted that there was a loan taken out by the park, which explicitly calls out an Intamin gyro swing. As I've said in other videos, a few days later the loan was satisfied. Don't know if that means it's cancelled, don't know if that means it was a very short-term loan, do not know, but there's still lots of people, myself included, who are hoping for this Intamin gyro swing. Again, no confirmation. I've had members of staff tell me, yes, it's happening, it's going where the Bolodrome was. That's certainly the most common rumour that's floating around right now. Personally, I had expected to see the Bolodrome start to be demolished by now, and nobody's posted pictures of it. So, got a sneaking suspicion that hasn't happened yet, which definitely means if we are getting the gyro swing there, it's not going to happen early next year. Possibly not next year at all, because they would need to have cleared that land by now. So, but yes, gyro swing, that started floating around in August. August is also when I went over to Efteling and Wallaby Holland. Now, Efteling is the park that this channel started at 2 years ago, and a beautiful park. I absolutely loved it. Second day I spent doing all the entertainment, which I don't do when I go to a park. I just go do the rides, but I decided to do the entertainment and I was actually blown away. Some of the stuff that is there is fantastic. If you haven't checked out that vlog, make sure you do. Wallaby Holland, probably less impressed with that one. It had a lot of hype and I was like, oh, there's an RMC there, there's Untamed and blah, blah, blah. I wasn't that impressed with the RMC, to be brutally honest. I preferred Lost Gravity and some of the other attractions. So, curious about that park. It's not one I'm going to rush back to, although they are getting 2 RMCs next year. So, that might tempt me. You never know if I'm kind of in that neck of the woods. This was also when I brought out yet another history series, Blackpool Pleasure Beach. And yeah, that was a mission to do because there is a lot of stuff in Blackpool Pleasure Beach. It's a very, very rich park from a history point of view. Now, September, I actually got a coaster in my backyard. Not literally, but like 2 miles up the road from me is Scotland's first alpine coaster and the longest alpine coaster in the UK. It's good, it is very good, but it is actually really, really difficult to get on because you have to book it in advance, and I'm kind of on their Facebook page and they're like announcing slots like 6 weeks in advance. And then occasionally they're like, oh, we've got a few slots that have appeared this weekend, but generally speaking, you have to book it well in advance and you can't just turn up, which is kind of, it's all right for me. I live around the corner, right? So I'm like, okay, I can go in a few weeks' time. But if you're traveling to Edinburgh and you're like, oh, I want to go and try that ride, yeah, good luck. Especially because I think it's supposed to be open all year round, and I think it would be amazing to do the alpine coaster in the snow You obviously don't know when it's going to snow, so you'd want to just go, oh, it's a snowy day, I'm going to go up there and do it. You can't. Hopefully, as the hype sort of dies down, it'll get to the stage where you can just turn up and just walk on this thing. It is good fun though. If you can get a ticket and you're coming up to Edinburgh, or you're already up here, I would recommend it. It is fantastic. This was also yet another social event. This time it was your experience guide. We went over to Emerald Park. We had some ERTs there. Unfortunately, the Cú Chulainn was shut. There was some issues with it. It was shut for quite some time actually, and I don't know if it's reopened yet. But nonetheless, it was still fantastic. We did get on the new rides, the Nafiana Force and Quest. That Vekoma STC is absolutely amazing. Loved that ride. So that was a fantastic trip. And again, if you haven't checked that one out, I'll put a card in. The other thing that happened this month was my daughter and I stupidly did a day trip to Thorpe Park. You'll see I like doing these crazy day trips. Flew down to Thorpe Park, did an A to Z challenge with Ben and Holly, and then flew back the same day. Was about a 20-hour trip. I was exhausted. So if you haven't seen that one, well, you need to watch my video and you need to watch Ben's to find out which one of us wins. And the last thing from September was that Blackpool Pleasure Beach announced their new season pass. It was ridiculous. It is ridiculous. They've done some offers. They did a flash sale where it was £100 and I snapped that one, as a few people did. Unfortunately, it was a 24-hour flash sale and some people missed it. But yeah, it was up at £200 odd at one point, and we still don't really know what's happening next year to justify spending that money on a season pass. So yeah, if you missed out on that cheap price, then I'm curious to see, because it's not worth the 200 odd quid from what I can tell. October was a busy one, as you'd expect, right? Because it's Halloween, and Halloween's typically where all the scare stuff happens. And I started saying, you're not going to see any Halloween content from me, because I just don't care. It doesn't do it for me whatsoever. What I didn't realise was, I was about to get approved for the content creator program at Alton Towers, which I was blown away by. But as part of that, they invited us down for the opening day of Hex, which was also when Scarefest was on. For starters, we got Hex back, happy days, and I got down there to experience it. Kind of think it's maybe a little bit too flashy, sprinkly lights these days. Still great to have it back. I still think it's probably the best Vekoma Madhouse out there. That was fantastic, but then because I was there, I decided to do all the Scarefest stuff, which I was petrified of because I'd never done it and I didn't know what to expect, and I ended up laughing the whole way around. So it was good, don't get me wrong, it was good. Because I haven't experienced those mazes before, things like Altonville Mine Tours and the Attic didn't frustrate me. I know a lot of people are like, this has been here for like 5-6 years now, get rid of it. But it was new to me, so I enjoyed it. And then because of that, I said if I get enough likes, I'll go and do Journey to Hell. So I did Journey to Hell as well, and I was actually quite impressed with that one from Blackpool, certainly because I had no expectations, really low expectations in fact, and it was pretty good. The tunnels going through the river cave section was amazing. Probably the best scare maze I've done. Granted, I've not done many, but it was fantastic. The other one was a little bit strange because they just cursed and sweared at you, which I thought was really weird. I liked the idea of the Ghost Train and Alice in Wonderland. They just didn't have enough actors in them to make it that intense. But it was still, the atmosphere was fantastic. The Roman actors were amazing. The opening section was great. The park was doing a really good job, and I have to give them credit for that. It's not the best event by any stretch of the imagination, but from what I've heard about previous events, they really stepped it up. So I was really glad to hear about that one. Now, this was also the first of 2 months where I decided to donate all the earnings that I made on YouTube to charity. And you guys watching videos basically is what it was all down to. The more you watch, the more money I got to then give to charity. And I think I raised £952 in total. I rounded it up to 1,000, and then there was some tax relief. I think it worked out at £1,200 in total. So spectacular amount of money. Thank you so much to all you guys. And I suspect I'll do something similar next year, but maybe for a different charity. All right, November wasn't the best month. It was mainly a bad month, let's be fair. So we'll start with a couple of good things. Blackpool announced that they were doing a non-rider season pass. Now, this gave us all that kind of glimmer of hope that, oh, non-riders coming back, that's fantastic, because, you know, people have been asking for this for a long time. What was weird was it was only available for a very short window of time. And I genuinely thought when they said available till blah, that was the price, and that the price would go up after that date. Instead, the ticket disappeared completely. But then people have bought this, so they're obviously going to have to honour it next year, because I haven't heard them saying they're refunding. So that means they have to support non-rider. And I really hope that if they're supporting even a handful of non-rider season passes that they have to then offer non-rider day tickets. So fingers crossed that's a positive and that we do get non-rider properly next year in Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Yeah, the other thing before I get into the negatives was this was when I released another history series, this time on Camelot, and it spurred the next one, which I'm kind of trying to do right now, which is going to be Flamingoland. So that was all the good stuff. The bad stuff, well, kind of bad. We finally saw some movement on Ice Blast. Now at this point we knew nothing, we just saw scaffolding going up and we're like, ooh, is it coming down? Is it getting fixed? What's going on? We obviously now know what's going to happen. And we started to see demolition of the Grand Prix, which again, I know it's kind of sad, but at the same time, it's better that we start to get that demolition than the attraction just sits there like SBNO for years and years and years. So I'm kind of glad they've knocked it down, even if it takes a couple of years for something to come in its place. I'd rather that than just things sitting there reminding us of what we could have had. So that was kind of slightly sad. What was very sad is that we lost a park. Flambar's closed after 40 something years, just literally out of the blue they just went, as of today, park is closed, that's it, game over. It's not a park I visited, but it is always sad to hear the closure of any park. So you know, disappointing that that one did go. We saw some other closures as well because Merlin announced that Bear Grylls Experience is closing. They certainly seem to be in a very strange spot right now, so they closed that. They lost their CEO. Well, I think he's leaving about now, by the end of the year, so by the time you see this, he'll be gone. So that was interesting. This was also when rumours started coming around, now confirmed, about Merlin Magic Making, and particularly the sort of studio that they have in Towers, that's closing, and they're looking to outsource stuff. Now, again, some people have said they already outsource stuff, so not necessarily the end of the world, but some of the people that worked there had been there for a long time, decades, and to lose your job at any time is terrible, but to lose it near Christmas, that's just not good. Not good in the slightest. Now, the other thing that we got around about this time, which also wasn't great, was this was when we started to hear rumours that King Ka was going. So many people were, those split camps, there were people like, this is going, get out there, get on it now, and other people going, no it's not, because the park hasn't said anything, it's fine, it'll be there. And I kind of hoped it was going to be the second camp, because I will be out there next year, and I really wanted to get on this. Of course, now we know it was confirmed to close after it closed, so there was no send-off, there was no get your last rides, it was like, it's gone. By the way, yeah, that was your last ride, see you later, we're demolishing it. In fact, I think they've now had permits to implode the ride in February. So there's going to be some detonations and it's going to come tumbling down. So I ain't getting on King Ka, and I'm kind of sad about that. So that moves us into the final month of the year with December, and this is a mixed bag, very, very much a mixed bag. So I said last month that we started to see some scaffolding go up on Ice Blast, and we knew nothing of it. We finally got confirmation this month of what is happening, and that is that it is coming back. It's getting a completely new pressure cylinder and a new theme, and now it's getting its own name, Launchpad. So there's no, I mean, unless NASA's going to sponsor this thing, which, let's be fair, that's not going to happen. It's going to be an unsponsored ride, which is not necessarily a bad thing. And we've already seen it's painted blue and all that kind of stuff. So that's fantastic that we at least have confirmation what is going on there. The other thing I said earlier on, just last week, so a few days ago for you guys, because it takes me some time to edit, I was in Disney and I did a little challenge. If you haven't already seen that challenge, check that one out and find out whether I can complete Disney in 7 hours. Yeah, that was a fun day. We got some bad news from Towers in that 3 attractions were getting removed. So Blade is gone. After 44 years, it's game over. And it's kind of frustrating because you think, oh, we're getting a new flat ride in Forbidden Valley. You know, this Huss Topspin is now constructed. And you think, fantastic, that's going to help. And they go, yep, new ride in, take one out. And it's such a weird space that I can only imagine another pirate ship is the only thing that's going to fit in there. So that's likely to just be a kind of a gaping hole for a little while. So that sucks. They also said they were losing Flavio's Fabulous Fandango. Not a massive surprise there. Came with the Retro Squad, stayed a little bit longer. Okay, fine, it's going, no biggie. And the dungeons that I kind of talked about earlier, at first everyone thought, oh, they're closing that, they're retheming it for the Scarefest, and then they'll take the overlay off and it'll go back to being the dungeons. No, they've confirmed they basically put so much effort into that overlay, that skinning, that they are not bringing back the dungeons. Now, I suspect you're going to get Amigos in the Afterlife for the next couple of years whilst they do something else with that building. I think Sean pointed out that they are getting solar panels on there. So they're clearly keeping the building. They've obviously got plans for it. I just think we're not going to see it for a little while. But that was 3 rides lost in one go. On a positive note though, the Sky Ride, which has been closed for the last 1.5 to 2 years, is finally testing. So 2025, we will no longer have to walk the whole way across bloody towers. We will actually get the Sky Ride back. Fantastic. Speaking of fantastic, this was also when Formula Rossa came back. Now, I did a video just before it came back saying, here's rides we lost this year. And I put Formula Rossa on that list because it's been standing by not operating pretty much all year and chunks of it were removed. So I was like, it's going. No, I was wrong. It's back, which is fantastic because I've still not been on that either. And as far as I can tell, nothing has changed. So at least it's back. That is a positive. And the final thing I've got for December, and indeed this year, is that the track for Falcon's Flight is now complete. That absolute monster of a coaster over in Six Flags Qiddiya, that huge, fast, scary damn thing, is now track complete. So hopefully it won't be too long until we start seeing them pull trains along. I believe the trains are already on the track. It's going to be quite some task for them to pull that train through because that is a very slow process and that is a very long track. But they will be pulling the train along that track, and then hopefully in a few months' time we will see it actually start to test. And I think from the interview that Sean had with the guy that runs the place, they said it was a 9-month commissioning period. That makes me wonder, like that basically means we're talking until September next year. So is Six Flags Qiddiya opening at the end of the year, or is it going to open earlier, missing that main attraction, and it will open later in the year? So I'm kind of curious to see how that one pans out. But anyway, that's quite a long video. I've just looked at the clock. Oh my God, I've been talking for ages. That has been 2024. Clearly a jam-packed year. Tons of content from me, tons of news around the world, tons of ride removals, tons of ride additions. It has been a hell of a year. So let me know in the comments down below what your biggest memories of the year are. Any videos that you've enjoyed, any videos you want to see me do more of, like these crazy challenges or more of these history videos. And yeah, it's almost New Year. So to all of you, have a fantastic New Year, and I will see you in 2025. Adios.